I want to introduce everyone to our Capstone project called JobScript, a job tracker project. My name is Tony Chan. My teammates are Jacky, Kuang, and Katherine Jaeger. So welcome to JobScript, your smart career companion. JobScript is a full-stack web app designed to help users organize job applications and build stronger skills for the careers they want. What makes JavaScript truly unique is how it tracks both job skills and user skills. When you apply to a job, JavaScript compares your current skill levels to skills required for that job. It will then show you what skills you already match, what skills you are missing, and how close you are by each skill. You'll know exactly what to work on and where you're already strong. You can also update and track the status of your applications from submitting a resume all the way to receiving and accepting a job offer. It was created with PostgreSQL and Supabase with a modern look. JavaScript helps you focus on what really matters, skills that get you hired, and no more spreadsheets. You can organize clarity and confidence. Tony's highlights are for the first couple weeks working on the entity relationship diagram, SQL queries testing, and testing the backend APIs. And then for the second half of the term, worked on the front end. I spent most of the time converting our static HTML web pages to embedded JavaScript templates. Here we have an example of the job entry website. All the input boxes are working. Next page is the login and sign up page. Here, make sure all the buttons are working, such as the sign up button where it pops up a form for you to enter your email and name information. Then on the development, what part of the project I worked on was mostly converting the static HTML, CSS pages into a EJS templates to enable dynamic content rendering with all the backend data. The technologies that I used were HTML, CSS, plus Express, JavaScript, and the embedded JavaScript, EJS. How the steps in development were: we first built the user interface with HTML, CSS, then defined a database structure, converted the pages to EJS, and finally connected everything with backend routes using Express. Static pages helped us visualize the layout and user flow before adding logic, and the SQL table column names guided the naming of the EJS template variables for smooth data integration. So what was originally planned was there were many choices of technology stacks from our past classes such as MERN or handlebars. We chose EJS, which is a backend server, which is easy to use. Challenges faced were had to relearn a lot of the technologies that I used in the previous classes, such as the SQL queries, JavaScript, Express, and also new technologies that I had to learn were the PostgreSQL and Supabase database. How I overcome these challenges were spent a lot of time doing the research on APIs, handlebars, Express, the Supabase database. And what I learned from this was a good top-down design and plan using the SQL tables as a master plan is a good approach. We kept the SQL tables up to date, and we picked the database before proceeding.
Hi, my name is Jacky. I'll start with a demo of the project. The web app has been deployed on the render platform. It can be accessed through this link. Just a warning, it may be slow since we are using the free tier. Since the last progress report, we have added and integrated the rest of the front-end components. So after the user logs in, they can now access the job skills, user skills, contacts, in addition to the original feature job entry and job list. So there are many different uses to our web app. It's not just focused on tracking job applications, as you can see here, but can be used to keep track of the skills needed for these jobs. So for example, let's say a software engineer at Apple may need to know C++. We can add it here. We can also edit and delete skills. as you can see here. Users can also keep track of their own skills to see how they are progressing. So, for example, we can edit the C++ skill, as well as delete and add other skills as well. Users can also use our platform to network with other users who may be looking for a job. So they can see other users on our platform, as well as add their own contact. So let's say we add an existing user. And we can also edit and delete users. As you can see here. As for development, for my part, I worked on the backend, authentication, and connecting the backend to the database. For my part, I mainly use JavaScript, the Express framework, Node.js runtime, and EJS template. I chose these because I was familiar with them already from previous courses. But we also wanted to try some new technology out, so we use Supabase for authentication, PostgreSQL for the database, and deployment on render. As for the steps in development, we started out by deciding who would work on what. So I worked on the back end, Katherine worked on the front end, and Tony worked on the database. Then we designed the database schema and the system of how the front end and back end and database will all integrate with each other. We used the agile method and we worked individually, where once our component was completed, we would reach out to the team chat to let each other know that we can integrate our parts together before moving on to the next step. As for the plan, we completed a majority of the listed function on the project portal. However, we did not incorporate any APIs. We also originally planned to have a separate front end and back end, but we switched to server-side rendering with EJS since we fell behind in trying to develop the front end with React. Um, Instead, we use EJS in server-side rendering, which just made things a lot easier. For challenges, there were two major challenges that I faced. The first was learning about how authentication worked, as this was the first time that I really worked with it. To overcome this, I used the online course, the Odin project, which had a section on how authentication worked. Um, my second challenge was learning how to connect and interact with the database. Um, Fortunately, Supabase and PostgreSQL had documentation as well as provided examples, as you can see here. As for what I learned a lot about planning, as there were components that I worked on that relied on someone else's code. So it was important that we completed our portion of the code on time. Otherwise, one person could be waiting on the other person. I also learned a lot about the importance of database design. Initially, I thought we had created a proper schema for our database, but as we worked on the project, there were issues coming up that caused us to redesign our database a few times.
Hi, I'm Catherine. My work was focused on the site visuals, UI design, usability, branding, that kind of stuff. For the visual identity, we wanted to make sure that it looked professional but inviting. So I had created a few logos for the team to give feedback on, and then we decided on which one we liked the most. So we ended up picking JavaScript. I made sure to set a theme for the rest of the site that was inviting. I wanted to make sure the layout made sense and had responsive design. The dashboard, this is where users would interact the most, so we wanted to make sure that it prioritized usability and clarity. I made sure that the visual hierarchy and layout made important actions easy to find and help coordinate the front end elements to match the back end logic. My part of the project, like I said, I did the front end visual design, and I wanted to make sure that the user experience felt polished and cohesive. Technologies used, in addition to what Tony had already mentioned previously, I also used Procreate and Figma. I used Procreate to create logos. I used Figma to start planning the layouts for the project before actually doing the coding. So I did concept development, design mockups, and then front-end development. And then from there, we implemented it and connected it to the backend. Originally planning on making a profile page and a settings page. The profile page ended up seeming redundant because it kind of just would have all the same information as the dashboard, but the settings was just due to running out of time. And then for challenges, I wanted to make sure that our screen sizes wouldn't hinder what the site looked like. So I made sure to have all of that be scalable for different screens. And the way that I overcame that was I connected different screen sizes so I could see them all update in real time whenever I made changes. The project taught me a lot about practical UI UX design, branding, and front-end development. I also learned how valuable it is of giving and receiving the constructive feedback in a team setting. It was a great experience collaborating across the different roles and seeing everything come together. Communication was very important because it was a good way to make sure that we ended up with an end product that everyone was happy with visually. Where things go from here, you could add the skills page where it would suggest skills for you to improve on, create a chat function with your contacts, and specifically, I think you could create a method to ask for references. In the future, you could also do some type of interview workshop, and it would help you with improving your technical interview skills by including activities and quizzes, and it could also go with the skill analytics to have the user focus more on the questions for the skills that they've been working on recently. Our app is available on Render, but it could be further developed in the future to make it more useful if we connected it to APIs of Glassdoor, LinkedIn, Indeed. You could pull in your contacts from LinkedIn, you could pull in applications from Indeed,